I think that the American identity is so fractured because of current day politics that there's almost no such thing as a movie that everybody can get behind. I think the most recent example of one was...
Why do you love movies so much?
I feel like I love movies because it's like a waking dream, right? It's a dream and an experience where you can, enter the mind of a character and experience the world through their eyes, and it's actually safe, right? Whether that character, gets horribly injured, has terrible things happen to them, or loses, loved ones, friends, family members, you're able to experience those things, the kinds of things that everybody experiences in life, in a way that's safe and in a way that imparts lessons, whether you're aware of it at the time or not. There's something in our lizard brain that responds to storytelling, because I think it's a way for us to exercise our own demons, or to deal with loss and pain from our past. And that's why I think storytelling, and in particular movies, and seeing a movie in a theater when it's dark and you're focused and you're not on your phone, you're not distracted. Although I will say there is an entire category of movies that I would say this would be a good movie to watch while you're folding laundry. And I have watched those movies, and I have folded laundry while I've watched them. But a film I know I'm really going to care about, I'm going to see in a theater in the dark, experience the world through that character's eyes, and come out the other end better for it. And it's so universal, that feeling. That's why, wherever you go in the world, people love to, have a story unfold on the big screen. I think there's something primal about that goes back to telling stories around the campfire or just a fire, right? There's something about it that's just embedded in our heads. And that's why, the love and passion for film is so universal worldwide.
And when did you find that category of the folding laundry film?
I think the folding laundry film came during the pandemic, in terms of watching stuff I probably would not have watched otherwise, when it's just, well, we're here, there's no movies at the theater, I'm gonna watch this thing. And so I think there is an entire category of movies, and a lot of, I would say, series television, where you can get a lot of the story that is happening just from hearing it. So it's kind of a radio play. And they say that the original Star Trek series, if you're not watching it, if you're just listening to it, and I can confirm this because when I was a kid, I used to record the audio of old episodes of Star Trek and listen to them. And even though I wasn't seeing everything, when I would listen to those cassette tapes later, I still got the story. All of your narrative points, your character moments, your drama from the music. There's a whole world of just that you can experience just from listening to it. And I would recommend, just as an exercise for fun, some of the content on streaming services like Netflix, you can get not just the captions on, but there's a thing called audio description. And I strongly recommend that you do this. Try this out for fun. Take something you like. If audio description is an option that's available, it's for people who are disabled, may not be able to see. And not only do you hear the dialogue, you hear a description of a narrator telling you what is happening action-wise on the screen. It's in a way almost like having the screenplay read to you. It obviously has a function, a useful function for people who are unable to see, but it also, as a way of learning, you can listen to these. Heck, you can listen to them while you're driving, and you get the entire story, the audio descriptive version. There's even you can look this up online. There are people who list some of the best audio descriptive versions of content. So I find it really useful. I think it's interesting. But the folding laundry, yes, I think we've all had that experience where you're like, this thing that I'm about to watch doesn't deserve all of my attention. For me, it's generally romantic comedies. Romantic comedies, as much as I am sometimes forced to watch them, I feel like that's something I can multitask and still enjoy.
Okay, so suppose tonight is laundry night. So after this interview, I'm going to, go down to the laundromat, and then I'm going to come back and start folding and organizing.
Right.
Can you recommend 2 movies for me?
Oh, sure. Marry Me with Jennifer Lopez, which I saw recently. That's a totally a fold laundry movie. Okay. And I would say Death on the Nile for recent films.
Okay.
They may not be recent when you're watching this. I have no idea when you're watching this. When are you watching this? I don't know.
All right, great. I want to do laundry right now and check them out.
But we all know we have those, right? Everyone where you're just like, this is like my full attention is going on this Christopher Nolan movie or whatever it is we're seeing. Like I'm going to turn off the lights and I have like this sort of LED like blue light that goes around my television. Kind of makes a movie theater experience in 4K, whatever. But then there's other things where you're like, nah, I'm just going to have this on in the background. Or for me, it's even a movie I've seen so many times I can quote the entire film.
Or what's great is when you think you're going to watch a film like that and you're actually surprised. Like I was watching old episodes. Do you remember VR5?
No, I don't remember.
Oh, VR5. Okay. So it had Laurie Singer and it was about her. She had this gift of being able to go into virtual reality, and she was the only one that had this ability. And so she was being like wanted by big tech at that time, which was in the mid 90s. And the storytelling was excellent, and it's got cool old graphics and modems. But I thought, oh, this is the perfect thing to put on. And actually, I couldn't do anything else.
Right. Like some of those you put on thinking like, whatever, I'm gonna organize my receipts, right? Okay, that's something you're to do. You put something on, and then you do get caught up. I mean, that's a pleasant surprise. But I kind of plan my viewing that way because I tend to watch at least a movie a day, if not more. It's part of what I do.
What does an American film mean today?
I really think that there is no American cinema today. The last great era of American cinema was in the 70s and probably the 80s as well. But I think that the American identity is so fractured because of current day politics that there's almost no such thing as a movie that everybody can get behind. I think the most recent example of one was the latest Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home, which was an incredibly fun, like Spider-Man, not just a Spider-Man movie, it's a Spider-Man movie that was built up over 20 years of Spider-Man movie fandom, starting with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and building up to this where now all the Spider-Men are united. That was like, hey, we can all get behind this. It's a completely fun superhero movie ride. We can all get behind it. Is that an American film? I don't know. I would argue that the superhero genre is something that's very American made, but I really feel we've lost our identity as a country because it's so fractured into multiple different Americas. And I'll give you an example. This is a weird thing. I did a panel at a convention called Politicon. And I pitched a panel called Trump the Movie. And I had a friend of mine who was a screenwriter. I had a friend of mine who worked in film development. And I asked, almost every president post their presidency has a movie made about them, right? Not a documentary, a dramatic movie that, sort of goes through the highlights, the lowlights. And I wondered if a Trump movie would ever be made, how would you market that movie? And it was a very interesting discussion because we got into this whole thing of like, okay, you make the movie, whatever the movie is, what kind of movie would it be? Would it be more comedic? Would it be sort of farcical? Like maybe maybe like From the Mind of Adam McKay or something like that. Like what would it be, one? But then here becomes the challenge of marketing that movie, which comes back to the question of American cinema. Okay, you've made a movie about the Trump presidency. Who is it for and how do you market it? Do you do a marketing campaign that is for the red states that makes Trump look like a hero? Do you do another campaign, another marketing campaign from the same movie that talks about how he's a horrible human being? And these are the trailers you would run in the blue states. I think it would be really interesting to see, which is why I think a movie like that will not be made. I don't think that there'll be a dramatic telling of his story of the Trump presidency. It's just not going to happen. And I think it has to do with our fractured America. That's why we have no really cohesive American cinema. I think that there are outside interests and the concerns of our corporate factory filmmaking are that this movie needs to play globally. So again, and I've talked about this many times, the check boxes that need to go, in order for something to play to the world means that you've kind of distilled it and it's not really a wholly American movie. And the only way you would notice this is if you watched a lot of foreign films or what they call now world cinema. So I would say to you, I say as an exercise for yourself, watch a Canadian movie. It's very Canadian. And, a lot of countries actually subsidize their filmmakers and the arts. And in particular is the Canadian Film Board, that you pitch a movie to the Canadian Film Board, has to have a certain percentage of Canadian talent in it, large percentage. It has to have Canadian themes and made for people in Canada. And there are a lot of things, if you're watching this, you're American, you're not going to get the jokes. I grew up in Michigan, just outside of Canada. And so I experienced the CBC. I watch Canadian children's programming. I watch Canadian movies. I watch Canadian hockey. I became a hockey fan from watching the CBC. But it's really interesting to see how distinct the American identity is to the Canadian culture. So do yourself a favor and see films from other countries, and you'll notice how important it is for those countries to lay out their identity and their culture. In particular, French cinema does that as well. So I'd say broaden your horizons, broaden your media diet, and you'll just notice that most of the movies that are made in America now are not for America, they're for the globe. They just are. And so I think what's happened is it's eroded our identity as Americans, or something we could get behind. Because like I said, you're going to make a movie about Trump, you're going to have 2 marketing campaigns for that movie, no matter what that movie ends up being.
Well, let's suppose we just take the name Trump out of it. We could use any president really in the last, let's say 20 years. We could use any media figures in the last few years. If we were to have a trailer that was specific to their audience, wouldn't it be almost considered propaganda?
Well, I would say that at least when it comes to documentaries, it's almost all propaganda now. I mean, I would say to documentary filmmakers, it's just like, I see a lot of docs, small indie docs that come to Film Threat for us to look at. And it's almost all solidly on one side of the equation or the other. I've seen, pro-Trump documentaries. I've seen anti-Trump documentaries. I would say that the only one that was truly unbiased was made by a British filmmaker called The Accidental President.
Oh yes, I heard of that. Yeah.
And I strongly recommend The Accidental President. It's just one because it's made by a Brit. It's just like, look, got no skin in the game. Let's look at Trump as a person and what he did. And it's really fascinating because I think it's an unbiased look at his run for the presidency. But really, most political documentaries I see now, they're either, I can already tell, it's like, oh, team red, team blue. What happened to being unbiased? What happened to being a journalist and seeking out truth no matter where it leads? You know, that used to be the way things were. Not sure what happened to that. You know, and I've often said, Film Threat, my media outlet, filmthreat.com, where we review independent films, we're politically agnostic. We have people on all sides, you know, on all different diversities of thought, I think is what takes priority with me. And I do enjoy reading someone whose opinion doesn't completely line up with mine. It's an opportunity to learn something. But I really see a fracture in the world of doc filmmaking, where most of what's being produced is purely propaganda. You know, there was and to be clear, my politics are very middle of the road. You know,
Sure.
I can sit here and talk to you all day about Star Wars. And Star Wars is actually a good place. I'm sure we'll get to some Star Wars talk. Star Wars is a good place because it's a thing that most people have seen. 99.9% of people have seen it. So it's a great entry point to talk about lots of issues. That particular movie or film series and all that it begat. But boy, we've really gotten to a place now where I just have concerns about, we've lost the ability to objectively look at facts. And I think that's lazy. Here's why it bothers me. It's lazy because, just as someone who's politically been in the middle, which means I generally despise both sides. You know, I think that let's come up with solutions to problems. And if you're focused on the solution, it really shouldn't matter necessarily the politics or what you may be compromised by when it comes to your donors. But now I feel that if you are on one side or the other, I feel that in my opinion, is kind of lazy, because what it says is the thinking is done for you, which is why I think there are many ways to look at an issue. So I would just like to see documentary filmmaking become less biased. I think that would be a great service to all of us.